We are live on Facebook. We are live on the Facebook business page. And we are now live on YouTube. Woot woot. Welcome everybody to story number 15. 15! How have I put up with you for so long? I'm only kidding. I love you lot. Do drop into the stream and onto the chat and just say hi, give a shout, and then I'll give you a shout out. Or don't have to give you a shout out, just let me know you're there. Because I do see all of you skulking about in the background there, but not actually saying a great deal. Although I do appreciate the fact that you do listen. It's much, much appreciated. So just waiting for everybody to come online. Before I start with today's biggin, I think this one's probably going to be even bigger than Rapunzel. Exciting stuff. And remember that this is parental guidance advised. I have no idea what's going to be in this story. I just know that it probably won't be anything like the Hansel and Gretel that you are used to. So do be prepared for that. And I will also reaffirm I have not read any of these. Hello there, Eamon. Hello there, my fine fellow. I'm rather dandy, thank you very much. I have to reiterate again to all of those that are watching that I have not read any of these stories. These are all completely live. These are all completely live and are read for the very first time to you guys in the translated English. Welcome, Father. Thank you for joining the stream and liking it. Hello, Mother. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. Thank you for reacting to the stream. These are all completely live and are read for the very first time to you guys. At least it's all working. That is what we want. Right. Okie dokie. Yeah, so just to... good evening, Mr. Myers. I assume you are now lying in your bed waiting for your bedtime story. Well, this is it. It is the fantastic Hansel and Gretel. And from this book, the wonderful Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales from the Brothers Grimm. I'm loving the stories so far. They are eccentric, which is everything about me, which is great. It's rather gothic, which I also like. It does have some blood, gore, and what have you, which I also do like, rather than a lot of nicey nice stuff. It's most certainly not the kind of Disney or Cotton World experiences you would expect in a story. And again, these are from the original German texts, from what they wrote, and they've been translated into English, but it's Old English, so the terminologies will be a little different. So if I do slip up, I do apologise. So there we go. There we go. There's a brief overview of basically saying, don't blame me if I get any sentences wrong. Hansel and Gretel. Let's begin. Near a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and the girl Gretel. He had little to bite and to break, and with great scarcity fell on the land. He could no longer procure daily bread. Now when he thought over this at night, in his bed, and tossed about in his anxiety, he groaned and said to his wife, "What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children, when we no longer have anything else? When we no longer have anything even for ourselves?" Apologies. Let me just move this screen a moment. Right, there we go. Okie dokie. We no longer have anything even for ourselves. "I tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning we will take the children out into the forest where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them 1 piece of bread, and then we will go our way. Then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find a way home again, and we shall be rid of them." "No, wife," said the man. "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces." "Oh, you fool," she said. "Then we must all four die of hunger. You may as well plane the planks for our coffins," and she left him no peace until he consented. "But I feel very sorry for the poor children all the same," said the man. The two children had also not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears and said to Hansel, "Now all is over for us." "Hush, Gretel," said Hansel. "Do not distress yourself. I will soon find a way to help us." And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the door below, and crept outside. The moon shone brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in the front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stooped and put as many of them in his little pocket of his coat as he possibly could get in. One sec. As he could get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, "Be comforted, dear sister, and sleep in peace. God will not forsake us." And he lay down again in his bed. When the day dawned, but before the sun had risen, the woman came and awoke the two children, saying, "Get up, you sluggards! We are going into the forest to fetch wood." She gave each a little piece of bread, and said, "There is something for your dinner, but do not eat it up before then, for you will get nothing else." Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had the stones in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked a short time, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and did so again and again. His father said, "Hansel, what are you looking at there, What are you looking at there and staying behind for? Mind yourself and do not forget how to use your legs." "Ah, father," said Hansel, "I am looking at my little white cat which is sitting upon the roof and wants to say goodbye to me." The wife said, "Fool, that is not your little cat, that is the morning sun which is shining on the chimneys." Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket onto the road. When they reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light the fire so you may not be cold." Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together as high as the little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and when the flames were burning very high, the woman said, "Now, children, lay down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread, and as they heard the strokes of the wood axe, they believed that their father was near by. It was not, however, the axe. It was a branch which he had fastened to a withered tree which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. As they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes shut with fatigue, and they fell asleep. When at last they awoke, it was already dark night. Gretel began to cry and said, "How are we to get out of the forest now?" But Hansel comforted her and said, "Just wait a little until the moon has risen, and then we will soon find the way." And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces, and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by break of day came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest?" "We thought you were never coming back at all." The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone. Not long afterwards, there was once more great scarcity in all parts, and the children heard their mother saying at night to their father, "Everything is eaten again. We have 1/2 a loaf left, and after that there is no more." Please, you got it working, Tobias. "The children must go. We will take them farther into the wood so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves." The man's heart was heavy, and he thought, "It would be better for you to share the last mouthful with your children." The woman, however, would listen to nothing that he had to say, but scolded and reproached him. "He who says A must say B. Likewise, and as he had yielded the first time, he had to do so the second time." The children were, however, still awake and heard the conversation. When the old folks were asleep, Hansel again got up and wanted to go out and pick up the pebbles as he had done before, but the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he confronted his little sister and said, "Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly, and good God will help us." Early in the morning came the woman, and took the children out of their beds. Their bit of bread was given to them, but it was still smaller than the time before. On the way into the forest, Hansel crumbled his in his pocket, and often stood still and threw a morsel on the ground. "Hansel, why do you stop and look around?" said the father. "Go on." "I'm looking back at my little pigeon which is sitting on the roof and wants to say good-bye to me," answered Hansel. "Simpleton," said the woman, "that is not your little pigeon. That is the morning sun that is shining on the chimney." Hansel, however, little by little, threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Then a great fire was made again, and the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired you may sleep a little. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening, when we are done, we will come and fetch you away." When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. Then they fell asleep, and evening came. Evening came and went, but no one came for the poor children. They did not awake until it was dark, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, until the moon rises, and we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have strewn about. They will show us our way home again." When the moon came out, they set out, but they found no crumbs, for the many thousands of birds which fly about in the woods and fields had picked them all up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We shall soon find our way," but they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all next day too, from morning till evening. But they did not get out of the forest, and they were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries, which grew on the ground. Okay. And as they were so weary that their legs would not carry them no longer, they lay down beneath a tree and fell asleep. It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always got deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they would die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which had sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened. And when it had finished its song, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted, and when they came quite up to the little house, they saw that it was built of bread and covered with cakes, but the windows were of clear sugar. "We will set to work on that," said Hansel, "and have a good meal. I will eat a bit of the roof, and you, Gretel, can eat some of the window. It will taste sweet." Hansel reached up above and broke off a little bit of the roof to try how it tasted, and Gretel leaned against the window and nibbled on the panes. Then a soft voice cried from the room, "Nibble, nibble, gnaw, who is nibbling at my little house?" The children answered, the wind, the heaven-born wind." and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who thought that the roof tasted very nice, tore down a great piece of it, and Gretel pushed out the whole one of the round window panes, sat down, and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a very, very old woman who supported herself on crutches came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands. The old woman, however, nodded her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. Then good food was set before them, milk and pancakes with sugar, apples and nuts. Afterwards 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them and thought they were in heaven. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was in reality a wicked witch, who lay in wait for children, and had only built the little house of bread in order to entice them there. When a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked it, and ate it. And that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like beasts, and are aware when human beings draw near. When Hansel and Gretel came to her neighborhood, she laughed maliciously and said mockingly,
"I have them. They shall not escape me again."
Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump red cheeks, she muttered to herself,
"That will be a dainty mouthful."
Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him into a little stable, and shut him in with a grated door. He might scream as he liked, that was of no use. Then she went to Gretel, shook her till she woke, and cried,
"Get up, you lazy thing! Fetch some water and cook something good for your brother. He is in the stable outside and is to be made fat. When he is fat, I will eat him."
Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was all in vain. She was forced to do what the wicked witch ordered her. And now the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the woman crept into the little stable and cried,
"Hansel, stretch out your finger that I may feel if you will soon be fat."
Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it, and thought it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. When 4 weeks had gone by, and Hansel had still stayed thin, she was seized with impatience, and would not wait any longer.
"Now, Gretel," she cried to the girl, "be active and bring some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean, tomorrow I will kill him and cook him."
Ah, how the poor little sister did lament when she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow down over her cheeks. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts in the forest had devoured us, at least we should have died together."
"Just keep your noise to yourself," said the old woman. "All that won't help you at all."
Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the cauldron with water and light the fire.
"We will bake first," said the old woman. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough."
She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which the flames of the fire were already darting.
"Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it's properly heated, so that we can shut the bread in."
And once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in mind and said, I do not know how I do not know how I am to do it. How do you get in?"
"Silly goose," said the old woman. "The door is big enough. Just look. I can get in myself."
And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it, and shut the iron door and fastened the bolt.
"Oh!"
She then began to howl quite horribly. But Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death. Gretel, however, ran like lightning to Hansel, opened his little stable and cried, "Hansel, we are saved! The old witch is dead!" Then Hansel sprang out like a bird from a cage when the door is opened for it. How they did rejoice and embrace each other, and dance about and kiss each other. And as they had no longer any need to fear her, they went into the witch's house, and in every corner stood chests full of pearls and jewels. "These are far better than pebbles," said Hansel, and thrust into his pocket whatever could be got in. And Gretel said, "I too will take something home with me," and filled her pinafore full. "But now we will go away," said Hansel, "that we may get out of the witch's forest." When they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a great body of water. "We cannot get over," said Hansel. "I see no footplank, no bridge, and no boat crosses either," answered Gretel. "But a white duck is swimming there. If I ask her, she will help us over," they cried. Little duck, do you see? Hansel and Gretel are waiting for you. There's never a plank or bridge in sight. Take us across on your back so white." The duck came to them, and Hansel seated himself on its back, and told her sister to stay by him. "No," replied Gretel, "that will be too heavy for the little duck. She shall take us across one after the other." The good little duck did so, and when they were safely across and had walked for a short time, the forest seemed to be more and more familiar to them, and at length they saw from afar their father's house. Then they began to run, rushed into the parlour, and threw themselves into their father's arms. The man had not known one happy hour since they had left the children in the forest. The woman, however, was dead. Gretel emptied her pinafore until the pearls and precious stones ran about the room, and Hansel threw one handful after another out of his pocket to add to them. Then all anxiety was at an end, and they lived together in perfect happiness. My tale is done. See the mouse run. Whoever catches it may make himself a big fur cap out of it. Well, how did we find that one? Was it good? Did you enjoy it? Was that like the original? Was that like the Hansel and Gretel that you expected? Because I think there was some slight additions there at the end. I only ever remember it getting up to the witch, and then the witch being killed, but it wasn't as gruesome as I thought it was going to be. Go on, comment. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Thank you, Tobias, for liking the video, sir. Thank you. There is a 10-second... Sorry, if you hear anything, it's me playing it back accidentally. It wasn't as gruesome as I thought it was going to be. And it would have been nicer for it to have been a little bit more gruesome, like, I don't know, they cut the witch's arms off and then threw her in bit by bit, or something like that. Maybe that's just my own imagination. But judging by some of the other stories, this was a little bit Disney. So it did sort of very much match the original story. Thank you, Mary, for reacting to the video. That's much appreciated. I did enjoy that story. I don't think I made too many mistakes on it for being the first time I've read it out loud to you guys, or read it in general, from this book anyway. Remember, do like, share, subscribe, and if you're watching via the YouTube channel, do hit that bell icon for notifications to make sure you get notifications when I'm next live. And on Facebook, you can follow me on my fan page if you want to keep notifications. Make sure you have the notifications active on there. And my personal page, I don't quite know. I really do. I must research the Facebook page to see how you can go about sort of following and stuff on that one. I think you can just follow it normally, or keep up to date. Or I'm sure there's a button to keep up to date when I go live on the main Facebook profile. But yeah, we're transmitting live on main Facebook, my business Facebook page, and YouTube simultaneously. And all three of them are on my screen right now. I'm running. Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I hope you really did enjoy this. Do feel free to comment what your thoughts are and how you found it. And we will start a new story tomorrow called The Three Snake Leaves. The Three Snake Leaves. No idea what that's even about. And the story after that's the White Snake, so I think there's going to be some sort of forest theme for the next few. But there always seems to be some sort of wicked witch or evil stepmother or children being killed or left or abandoned. See? Told you it was PG. Anyway, take care, guys. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe. It does help me tremendously. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and